The purpose of the Global CFO Council is to provide an educational and networking forum for senior financial executives in order to share best practices, discuss current financial issues, and to learn about current topics related to the performance of their jobs.
Lisa Burbage is the CEO and founder of Wellness 5, an employee wellness expert. Lisa, I think you got your undergrad in business administration from the College of Charleston. Is that correct?
It is.
And your master's degree in education from USC.
Correct.
And super active community volunteer on a number of boards. One, I believe you're a board member of the Foundation of College of Charleston, and an active speaker. I listened to some of your online speeches. They were really fantastic. You have an amazing story as a cancer survivor. I think I'm really blessed to have you here and speaking today. You got a dozen certifications. I'm not going to read them all, but certifications in wellness, health, and diabetes management. And two interesting things I think I found about you, Lisa. Lisa, I think before this wellness initiative, you were a realtor. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yep.
And then before that, I think you were in college administration.
Right here in
At the
Charleston.
College of Charleston. And before that, I think you were in college administration at College of Charleston and USC.
Spot on, Robert.
All right. All right, Pete, you're up next. Pete, managing partner at Dynamic Leadership Development, executive coach and consultant. Pete, before that, I think you were investment banking, corporate financial advisory. And did you get your undergrad in econ from Stanford?
Yes.
And MBA in finance, Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir.
Certified executive coach. And okay, a couple interesting things. I think you're married, 3 kids.
As far as I'm aware.
Is your wife the head of school at Charleston Day School?
Yes, she is.
And do you play ice hockey and try to play the guitar?
That is true.
And in high school, did you play tennis and wrestling?
Very good, Robert. I did.
And only for time am I going to show pictures. So you're very lucky.
You can show my hair. My hair was more plentiful then.
I know. I almost didn't think it was you, but that is for for later. If I ever need anything to hold against you, I have that available. But it is my honor and privilege to have you both here today. And thank you for being so flexible. And I apologize for all my technology problems. I'm so glad this isn't a technology presentation. This is wellness. And I'm telling you, I need wellness and peace right now. So please teach me how to manage stress. And I pass the mic to Peter and Lisa. I'm going to unmute myself when we get to Q&A.
You can go to the first slide now.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. I've had it with all these health gurus that are always telling us that if we would just exercise more, we could manage our stress better, or eat more fruits and vegetables. Not a blood pressure drop, but so would those extra 15 pounds we've all during COVID. Or maybe you're someone who finds yourself on Zoom calls most of the day. And some business expert has told you, okay, make sure your routine is just right. Your background is neutral enough to not offend anyone. Oh, and I forgot, make sure you look fantastic and have more energy and animation than you've had in years. I happen to have a house at home with me too, but maybe you're someone who also has a child at home. You find yourself most days screaming into your phone or to the computer to drown out the other voice, or worse yet, crying. Or maybe in the middle of a call, your pet decides that they need some attention. And so they sit right there on your keyboard. Or better yet, they spill over your coffee. You just another day and working from home paradise. Most of us haven't really had to dress for work in several months. Oh, well, okay, maybe from the waist up. In fact, have actually gone up by 143%, while pant sales have actually declined by 13%. The other day, since I had my yoga pants on, which I do now, total confession here, I decided I would try a virtual yoga class. Well, 10 minutes into the class, I was sound asleep on the living room floor. Exercise. I think what I needed was more sleep. You know, we're so tired from all these virtual meetings that we feel like we're going to drop dead. We are emotionally and exhausted. Loneliness has become elevated because of demanding work. You I'm a coworker. Heck, just Google it. And the extension of our workday means that we really don't have a lot of extra time to cultivate relationships. And not to mention, the political and social environment right now has added even further to our sense of isolation and exclusion. Talking to a business coach on the West Coast, and he told me he had been asked by a company to actually come in and train their employees on face-to-face communication. In a matter of months, they had forgotten how to communicate in person. They were come back into the office and working time. The heavy use of technology and this always being culture that we find ourselves in is leaving our workers more stressed, less rested, spend more time on social media and different apps as a means of escape, but also oftentimes that makes them feel even worse. It created a workforce lonely, isolated, alone, and very left out.
Slide.
Irony in all of this. In such a connected world, people are feeling more disconnected than ever. In fact, Gen Zers, 79% of them said they feel alone. The millennials, well, they're not too far behind. They're at 71%. Well, we're only lonely 50% of the time. Loneliness is a real health concern. It can shorten a person's life expectancy by as much as 15 years. To smoking, 15 being obese. So for an organization to create a more energized, engaged, productive, and loyal workforce, you need to be aware and empathetic towards this loneliness crisis. Work is a place where people oftentimes create their sense of identity and belonging. As leaders, you have a unique opportunity right now to provide your people with a greater sense of acceptance, support, and inclusion.
Slide.
Where I had a senior level executive and an entry level employee both in my program. They both wanted to get healthy. Quest to get healthy, they suddenly found themselves on a very level playing field. It's not often that an entry level worker gets to interact with the highest level executive in their organization on a regular basis. At the end of the program, entry level employee had lost the most weight of anyone else in the program. She had gotten off of 2 medications. Needless to say, she felt included, valued, and not only by senior leadership, but as humans, we're social beings, and we all have a desire to be accepted, cared for, and involved in meaningful community. These desires are essential for our survival. Like our ancestors who roamed the plains and were member of tribes, if someone vanished from a tribe, their chance was pretty unlikely. Loneliness creates such periods of loneliness can lead to high inflammation in the body. Excess weight gain, insulin resistance, and even problems focusing and concentrating. If it's left unchecked, it can move into becoming a chronic disease, which a lot of those are on the rise right now, like type 2 diabetes, blood pressure, heart disease, Alzheimer's, autoimmune disorders like MS and rheumatoid. All of these are on the rise, yet 8% of them, 80% of it can be stopped by making only 20% of whether we get a chronic disease or not. Yes, we control over our health, we often realize. As humans, we want to survive, belong, and become better. Understanding someone else's point of view, their behavior, can create psychological distance. By opportunities for proximity, understanding, and empathy, it's critical to for the health of your employees to create this type of an environment where they can grow and feel a part. Abraham Lincoln, when he was president the first time, a lot of political enemies actually on his cabinet. He was not. I don't like that man. I must. Distractions, hostility, ignorance, fear, and selfishness can all create distance between people. But if your goal as an organization is to do a better job of inclusion, employees the opportunities to help themselves with support, accountability from a trained coach and their employees there at work. Gap between your people. Wellness today is a lot more than fruits and vegetables. And I'm going to see if we have any questions before I turn it over to Peter.
Yes, we do. Lisa, can you hear me?
I can.
All right, question number one. These are just out of the chat box, and in case anybody, add them there. I'll hit as many as I can, and this pause, and we'll have a couple more pauses. And Lisa, I'd put this under the banner of connection and inclusion. Any advice for us as managers when we should use a video call versus a phone call to help that connection, to help that inclusiveness or that connectivity? What do you think there are any rules there or tips or tricks on modes of communication?
Well, I don't think we're going to be able to totally eliminate virtual meetings, not in the near future anyway. And so I would also check in with your employees by phone. You schedule an appointment just to have a phone chat, or maybe you don't even schedule the appointment. You just randomly call them. If you don't get them, you get a message. They can listen to it later. It's an extra step to showing that you care.
Lisa, another question was around it was always hard to get some people to contribute and participate. Some people's personality is just more reserved. Any tips that you can share with us on how to get people to share and to contribute when you want to be inclusive and you're trying, but some people don't maybe communicate in a group setting? What are your thoughts, in person or remote, on getting people to contribute so you can have more inclusion of ideas?
I've obviously been running most of my programs virtual these days, but prior to the pandemic, I was running them on site. But what I've noticed is in this virtual world that we live in, some of the more quiet employees are now speaking up. Not everybody's looking at them. Well, maybe only stop, but they're looking at their hands and they're doing. And so they feel safer and more secure around speaking up. Now, if I'm running and you see someone is knocking and not participating, I'll often say, John, do you have anything to add to what's just said? Bringing them out, and they may say, no, I have nothing to add, but at least they know you've recognized them, that their input is important if contribute, but they don't have to contribute. But I think just acknowledge very effective. And like I said, virtual call to speak up more.
We had a comment about servant leadership, and many of the things that you're speaking to fall in some of the books that have been written on servant leadership. Any thoughts or comments on that?
Servant leadership, can whoever has a definition of what they mean by that?
Yeah, there's a couple different authors that have written about it, but the idea is that you're working for the best interest of others. We've all had managers that seemed to be working for their own best interest, but a servant leader is someone who is looking out for their employees and their customers and vendors. That you you lead in such a way where you're just trying to serve others with your decision making and your actions.
Okay. So the question is this part of servant leadership?
Yeah, well, it was. We're just asking if you felt like there was a connection there with those books. I'm going to answer for you and say yes. Everything you're saying,
Okay.
It's a very positive thing. The compliment is yes. It definitely aligns with the principles of servant leadership. And final question, Lisa, and I'll hold the rest for the next break, is around, you mentioned re-entry, that now we're going into the office again fully or part-time. Any advice for those that are finding it difficult, or they have a team member that's finding it difficult to re-enter back into being in an environment with around a lot of people all the time, and maybe the noise, and communicating in person again?
Mm-hmm.
Any advice for those re-entering?
Obviously, I'm sure everybody is adhering to the CDC's guidelines on social distancing and wearing masks and making people feel comfortable. But I would gradually do it. The coach that I mentioned earlier in my presentation, he actually said that the people were not coming back full time. They were coming in one day and then maybe working from home one day and then coming in another day. And maybe you even scale that back to maybe 4 hours. And then, just let people come in at their own pace. There's other people, though, that are dying to come back because of some of the distractions I talked about. They want to get back to work. And so I would just look at it to see how comfortable someone is and willing to come back, and then play it to their schedule and their comfort level.
Lisa, one more question to pull the string on that, because there's a question in the box that I think connects to that. When you reaching out to each individual employee, trying to manage each person slightly different, are you noticing any difference? You mentioned earlier about some people feel a real sense of isolation working remotely. Some don't. Every employee is different, and it's usually not this easy. But have you noticed any maybe similarities between age groups? Are maybe more senior, more mature, experienced professionals more or less likely, or more junior people more or less likely to feel isolated? Anybody we should have our antenna up to make sure that they're feeling that connection and inclusion? And
yes, that's a good question. As I did reference on earlier in the talk, millennials and Gen Zers. Gen Zers are the people between, say, 22 and 25, and then millennials would probably be on about 45. Give or take. It's got a little different definition of that. But the people that are junior are the ones who seem to be having the most time with it. A lot of them live alone. They live in an apartment. They live alone. Work is their socialization. Those of us who are older, who are married, have children, have families, we're not quite as isolated. So I would pay special attention to your younger employees more so than your Gen Xers and your boomers. Gen Xers 40.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Lisa, for that. I'm going to put myself back on mute, and I'm going to advance to the next slide.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Robert.
Sure.
We've covered, Lisa spoke to a lot about awareness and empathy, and also introduced the concept of taking action, and in doing so, developing habits. So before we get into that, I just want to say on servant leadership, good thing I didn't answer that question because I would have thought it had something to do with staff hierarchy at Downton Abbey, something like that. So actually, some of the comments that I'll have also fit into that servant leadership concept of serving employees and others through leadership roles. That's woven throughout. Next slide, please. You can keep going. Sorry, back. Alfred North Whitehead, interesting guy, lived from the late 19th century through the mid 20th century. He was a philosopher and a mathematician. I really liked his comment on civilization, and I'm going to summarize it as follows, that developing good habits is the foundation of progress for civilization. So we're talking about habits for civilization. We're talking about nothing less. And that is a takeaway. So I'm going to go back and say, if for some reason we have technical difficulties and I get blotted out from your screen, here's the takeaway on my comments. I'll give you the upfront is, and you can go to the next slide. This is in the context of what's an aspiration, big picture, be trusted, for example. Maybe you want to be perceived as doing goodwill for others. Then under that is goals, meet deadlines. Lisa gave me a great acronym for goals. SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. All of us, I think, on this call have done goal setting. It helps to go back and take a look at what are your criteria for goal settings. Coaching is all about goals. Coaching is all about action to get to goals, and the art and the science is in working on achieving those goals in a continuous process. I'm not going to spend time on routine. Everybody does routines. Robert has a great routine for setting this whole thing up. That's a collection of habits defined as what generally subconsciously that have been developed over time, and they often go on in the background. You have a lot of habits. Well, what got me interested in habits is part of my coaching practice is we have this, in a sense, protocol or system and structure when clients, individuals, or groups meet. They set the agenda on what they want to focus on and drive toward meeting. And then, they go away they or the group goes away for a week or 2 weeks or a month, comes back. The ones who are really good at setting goals and creating habits come back and have done that. But a lot of people, including very high achieving people, don't have a protocol for getting done what they say they're going to do. That's not a regular thing of changing their behavior. Habits are the foundation for doing that. It doesn't mean everything you do is from a habit, but a lot are. You can change the slide. Here's the overarching concepts, not just for habits, but for a lot of things. But for behavior design, help ourselves and others do what we already want to do. Help ourselves and others do what we already want to do. I'm going to talk about motivation. The whole point of what I'm getting at is that motivation may not be there. We're coming up with something to make it real simple and real easy and remove the barriers and restrictions so you can keep climbing that mountain. Even if you find yourself just being able to take one step. Slide. So you could go back. Yeah, there you go. So the other thing, and this is really important, is to genuinely help yourself and others feel successful. I'm not talking about a kind of false cheerleading. People can tell when it's not genuine. And there are small ways of feeling successful. And part of this is designing what it is that you do in your goals and your steps to optimize or maximize the probability that you will achieve what you define as success along the way. Mountain climbing, I did a fair amount of it when I was back in the day. I find it may be it's a cliche metaphor, but it's quite appropriate. And many of my clients understand when I say, as your coach, I'm going to walk behind you. I may be beside you. I'm not going to lead. You pick the mountain, you pick the route, and we'll get there. Slide. Some goals. The point here, a wellness goal. Robert, somebody tells me you know something about running long distances. So I was pandering by putting it in there. Some of these goals can be very specific, and the design of those goals around the behavior you want to choose, that's, again, I'm going to say art and science. Some are big and fuzzy. Develop a problem-solving system I find interesting. I find it interesting to talk to people, not only financial professionals, engineers, capital markets, traders. What's your approach to risk-taking? Is it seat of the pants? Do you have a rigorous system? How do you shape that? It differs with everybody because everybody's different. Slide. At this point, I'm going to rest. Any Q&A? Robert, should we stop here?
Yes, I got a couple questions for you. And question number one is talking about these goals and protocol and habit. Can you talk to the benefits of a team? Is a team helpful? You know, like if you have you were pandering to me with running, like maybe a running group, or Lisa mentioned yoga, going to yoga. Well, she mentioned yoga pants. I don't know if she does yoga, but going to a yoga class with others. Can you speak a little bit to the benefits or pitfalls of a team? And
yeah. Good question. I'm going to say it depends, but let me give you a couple of examples. Being together with others is a great way to, as a part, it could be a major part or part of providing the tools, and I'm going to say the motivation to achieve goals. Behavior, addiction therapy groups are used. Think about, I call it the Polar Bear Club. Think about, well, I don't know about down here, but definitely up in Chicago, Lake Michigan in early March, it's I think 52 degrees. What gets people in there? It's hard to jump in on your own, but when you're with a bunch of people, you go in. The military uses that concept really well. Where doesn't it work? Here's something I was just talking about, whiteboarding, brainstorming. Studies have shown that what works best is if people individually do their own brainstorming, and then you get the group back together once people have really pushed themselves. So, that's a really good question, and there's a lot of research being done on it. So that's my answer, is that it's helpful. But if you're in a group and you feel like you're wasting your time at a meeting, figure something else out.
What about accountability? How can accountability be used to help you keep on track with your goals?
Good question. Accountability is a big part of coaching. It's become something more than just being a CPA. It's interesting. So I found that, for example, you can have self-accountability. Now people have apps, that remind them of stuff. And Lisa and I were prepared for a question about that. What works best for most people is to have a human being that you respect, that or a group. You can have group accountability. That's what staff meeting every week is a form of accountability. What doesn't work for people is somebody that they feel, again, help people do what they already want to do. And if somebody doesn't want to report to you and doesn't want to check in because maybe they don't like you, maybe there's something else going on, don't do that. And be honest about it. So accountability works, again, if designed properly, to help people do what they already want to do.
Lisa, did you have anything to share on?
Yeah, accountability is, as Peter said, is so important. And in my programs, they're all groups. I don't do individual coaching because I want that team synergy. It's very easy to blow yourself off to not go exercise. You're tired, whatever. But when you have to come back to a group and report, hey, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. That's pretty powerful. That's the motivator. I was talking about motivation. I mean, others motivate you. So they're learning together, you're trying new things out, because habits don't happen overnight. You've got to fall off the wagon, and then you get back on, and then you fall off again. I mean, change is not linear. So being able to have the support of a team and a group is so important when you're trying to make change. Can't emphasize that enough.
I got something else is, often, people find themselves as mentors or people reporting to them, as a coach. A lot of people kind of use you as being somebody to be accountable to. My experience is that as somebody to whom people are accountable, you have a limit to that, and people need to, kind of pay attention to their span of control of attention. The criteria is you should really care about that person. And a lot of people, you find, well, they're checking in with you, but if you don't hear from them, you're happy. That's not a good sign.
I've got a bunch more questions I'm going to hold just for time. I know there's another QA break. So guys and gals, please continue to chat, put them in the chat box. I'm going to mute myself, and I'm going to advance your slide so we can hear the rest. I'm looking forward to this.
All right. I'm mindful of time here, but like I said, you got the commercial up front, so we're good to go. Behavior. This is 3 things to put in your briefcase as a takeaway. I talked about motivation, and then the other 2 concepts, the other 2 components of any behavior, for any behavior to happen: motivation, ability, prompt. If one of those is missing, behavior is unlikely to happen. Okay, you can think about it. I won't go into the detail, but there's a lot under that iceberg. And if one of those is diminished, they're less likely to happen. So I'll give you an example about motivation. Years ago on the West Coast, a couple of years ago, I was on the West Coast. I was in a gym, and a guy was practicing what appeared to be one-handed handstands. And I looked at the guy, and he was doing it for about 3 seconds. He had these blocks. We got into a conversation. I was curious. Well, his goal was to be able to do a handstand for 10 seconds. I asked him how long that would take. He had a regular routine daily of going through this ritual. And he said, if I do this every day for 3 months, I'll be able to stand on my one hand for 10 seconds. Why in the world? Why is that a goal? And he said, there's so much involved. It's the discipline. It's the components of each of these. My goal is actually to practice this. So in effect, the journey's the goal. If he gets there, great. If he doesn't, he will have developed so much along the way that he described is helping him not only physically, but mentally, being mentally sharper, able to focus, a whole bunch of things. So that's a good illustration of doing things that don't appear to have other benefits, but that they do. And he was very mindful of how he designed his routine. So that's something to think about. Keep going. Slide. Motivation. So motivation is really interesting. And when I started, I was thinking in my head, and a lot of people think, get more motivated. Doesn't happen. Motivation is motivation is unreliable. It's a fickle friend. It comes and goes. It's not even as reliable as the tide. Here's a quote. Motivation is like a party animal friend. Great for a night out, but not someone you'd rely on to pick you up from the airport. So you got to understand motivation, its roles and limitations. The key is to make those habits you're trying really simple and really few. We all think, most people say motivation, oh, carrots and sticks. Next slide. This is an example of somebody trying to motivate somebody, and it's regarded, carrots and sticks are in a class called manipulation motivation. Carrots and sticks are everywhere. They do work. They're less sustainable and reliable. It really depends on the individual. All I'm getting out of them is a lot of profanity. Think about how often either you've caused that or have, maybe not profanity, but not happy. Okay, next slide. So we're focusing on ability and prompt. And I focused on ability, make it really small. And prompt is, when I do X, then I'll do Y. When I do X, then I'll do Y. And then there's the success and celebration. That's the recipe card. Next slide. So here's the recipe. After I, here's an example, and I've got other examples. If I note that the last person has entered the virtual management team meeting that I'm hosting, that's the prompt. There's a time and a place. You know when it's going to happen. You can remind yourself. The action, the small behavior is, I will look into the camera lens and greet each person by name. I don't think Robert's doing that because there's a lot of you. I'm sure he would love to be able to do that. This design doesn't work. But for a smaller meeting, for a virtual meeting, think about something like that. And then when you do it, this is really important. You got to celebrate. And celebration wires this into your brain. You say to yourself, well done. You can do a little tap on the table. A lot of people discount that, but I've done this for developing habits. Strangely, it works. It's that cycle wiring into your brain. You could click through here. And so, Lisa, I think we're over to you.
Okay. We've talked about awareness. We've talked about empathy. Peter's gone into action, habits. So as we've learned today, awareness of our employees, what they're dealing with, empathy towards them. And then by taking action, you're not only helping them, but you're helping yourself. And action is what's required to establish good habits or create habits. And good habits are the foundation for sustainable change. A powerful stems from one's desire to utilize their strengths, to their talents, and create habits that help them make a contribution to the organization, to their team. By that opportunity, you're freeing them up to do higher quality work, which in turn boosts company performance and profits. Thank you for your time today.
Robert, it's I'm going to hand the mic to you.
Great. I got a couple of questions in the box. One from Matthew. This is a good one. How many habits or changes or goals at a time? Should it be one? Should it be a handful? What's your advice if you're working on change management with yourself?
In keeping with philosophy, keep it real simple. Start with one at a time. One at a time. As people develop the rhythm and understand the style and customize it to themselves, maybe maybe add more. I kind of say, think about the best analogy I didn't want to put in here. Remember when you're learning how to drive a car or teaching somebody, how many things can you do at first? And after a while, you start to wire in all those little micro functions.
Lisa, this question I think is good for you. Is what are some workplace wellness ideas that work? They tried Fitbit, that didn't work. Wheeze, everybody sold them on Craigslist. Team challenges, nothing seems to be working or gaining traction. Everybody's so busy. What's some wellness ideas at work?
Well, depending on whether you're back at work or whether you're still working in a virtual environment, I think just survey your employees and find out what they want. We assume a lot. And find out what is loneliness. Somebody come in and talk about stress management. I really don't think in this environment people are overly focused on losing weight, veggies, and Fitbits. I think they're struggling to survive. And so by asking them what they want, you're showing them that you care, but you're also getting the information that you need to create things that they'll attend, that they'll show up for. So that would be my recommendation, would be to have a survey. And also to dovetail on that habit question, as Peter said, you got to bite size it down. I mean, I'm always in the wellness realm, but if somebody tells me they're trying to run a 5K and they haven't even walked 40 minutes, it down. Maybe the first thing they go get a good pair of running shoes. All they do that day. The next day, maybe they actually put them on. That's all they do that day. And tiny and down to a very small level. Most people fail at setting goals and creating habits because they have too lofty an expectation. And by ministering it, they build some momentum, they build some confidence, which so many people don't have today. Success. Okay, I nailed that. Great. Now I can go on to getting outside and walking maybe 10 minutes. This all or nothing thing that we're also obsessed with. It's I could go on for days, but I won't.
Open for either of you is around how with either personal wellness or with leadership development, how having a why, identified within yourself what that why is, why you want to change, how can that play a part of what we're talking about?
I'll do quickly. Huge. People started asking me about why, and it's a mission. It's huge, and part of it is asking yourself why and revising and refining it on a regular basis. It's equivalent to having your company mission statement. If it's true and rings true, people can use it. Most people don't have a good personal mission statement. That's the why. Lisa, I don't know if you have anything that can add to that.
Well, I always, when I work with my clients, I always say, what's the end goal here? Why are you doing this? What do you want to achieve at the end of this program or time frame? And then that helps to keep them motivated. Because change, like I said, is hard. And so when they fall off the wagon, what's going to motivate them to want to get back on? Well, the goal at the end. And so that why is constantly present with them. I always tell my students, don't focus on how many pounds you want to lose. Think about what that's going to enable you to do. What going to enable you to do that you've not been able to do now. Focus on that and not the pounds. And so that's, I think I can't stress a why is very, very important. And it's one of the first things that I think any good coach would help their employees pinpoint. What is it that's really important, not to you, but to them?
That is a perfect way to end. This was fantastic. I got like 2 pages of notes, Lisa and Pete. This was awesome. I really appreciate you guys agreeing to do this. You brought an amazing amount of information to us. I apologize for like 3 days worth of technical difficulties. You all were so gracious, and it helped my stress during this presentation that you were so kind. I am in running shorts with elastic waistband right now. I haven't put on a pair of slacks or a belt in like 6 months. So I could really understand Lisa when she started the presentation about how others are feeling. Some notes I really wanted to reiterate. I love the idea of the bite size and the baby steps, inclusion and connectivity, and identifying that why, that personal mission statement, as Pete said, or an end goal, as Lisa said. I think that's really important. And I personally, I'm on a wellness journey, and I think accountability is unbelievably important. And finding a coach to give you that accountability is absolutely key. And Lisa, I've gotten to work with for a year, unbelievable and awesome. If you're looking for corporate wellness, and Pete, if you're looking for an executive coach, amazing, and knows how to play the guitar, so you might get a twofer there. Just really fantastic, Lisa and Pete, and I really appreciate it. Folks, in the last 10 seconds to close is, as always, a great way to say thank you is to like, comment, and reshare my post on LinkedIn about the event. It's a great way to thank the speakers and to also spread the word about the CFO Council. So thank you all very much, and I hope everyone has a well and stress-free day. Bye, everyone.